Okay, let's get started with it. Hello internet and welcome to the 1k video. Holy somehow we managed to reach 1k. Also, that's right, I'm out all of the swear words now because we've unlocked monetization, and that means we've got to go kid friendly, ladies and gentlemen. No more and you. I'm kidding, I'm just pressing the button. I have a bleep button and I never use it because well, whatever, it doesn't matter. What does matter is that we reached 1k subscribers. How in the actual did that happen? But with all sincerity, actually thank you to everybody who's participated in the channel so far, everybody who's stuck around, everybody who's joined for a little while and then decided to leave. Even those people who unsubscribed, thank you for your participation, thank you for your time spent. I mean, it's kind of pointless thanking them because they're clearly not going to be here. But that doesn't mean I'm not grateful for everybody who's participated along the way. All of the people who have left feedback, suggestions, and just taken part in whatever the heck this wild ride has been so far. So when reaching a milestone such as this, there are various options for what to do in order to celebrate. Now, the problem is blowing up the SMP, which would be one of the big and easy things to go for in this situation, has already been done recently at that for the 1 year milestone. So I guess we can't really resort to blowing up the Minecraft SMP. I mean, I could always just do it again, but I kind of feel like moving forwards, progressing and coming up with new ideas would be good. And following on from some suggestions as well, I think one of the easy go-tos, especially since I've been talking about it so much on the live streams, is to just do a little bit of an overview of the setup that I'm working with and kind of going over the new computer as well. Now, I'm not trying to flex. I want to make that very clear. I'm quite reserved. I don't like to show off things if I don't have to, but at the same time, I'm short on ideas. I kind of have to. I hope that doesn't reflect poorly on me, but honestly, I'll take the ideas that I can, especially when they're coming from the community as well. This is community driven. So if anything, at you, Clanky Uwu, this is all on you, buddy. This was your idea. Oh, I joke. But either way, since it's an easy one to get ready ahead of time, because I am 14 subscribers away. 12? Fuck, I'm 12 subscribers away. Jesus Christ. Okay, well, at least I'm getting something ready ahead of time, and this is what I've been talking about on the live streams as well. I want to have something that I can upload as soon as I realize I hit the milestone. It's very easy, and I kind of sympathize with a lot of other YouTubers. It's very easy for this milestone. It's very easy for this milestone to creep up on you, and to suddenly be like, "Oh, I surpassed the milestone, and I haven't got anything uploaded and ready." So I am preparing. I have slowed down the content a little bit as well, not to give myself time and to slow down the subscriber growth, although that has been a fortunate byproduct. That is for another time. That's for another video, another time. Either way, I've been exceptionally busy with way too many things to do in real life, and that has taken up plenty of time. But without further ado, let's just do a little bit of an overview of the computer and the parts and the things involved. Let's just go through the list on PC Parts Picker, which is the site that I ended up actually setting this thing up, trying to find out if things were compatible. A lot of the time they weren't. It took quite a while just to get this list formatted in the first place, let alone to get things and actually have them available to purchase. I'll explain a little bit more about that a little bit later on, but for the time being, let's start at the top with the AMD Ryzen 9 5950X, which is pretty cool, pretty epic indeed. And the reason I decided to go for this one is almost exclusively based on frustration from my previous system. So for context, my existing PC has a 4690, and that has definitely been having some difficulty. Just go back and watch some of the Far Cry content if you need some context for why this is a problem. The graphics card in those Far Cry streams was fine. The FPS was not fine, and that's because my CPU has been a bottleneck of my current system, or I guess my old system at this stage. I've just had the new one set up and deployed and ready to use at this stage. But either way, my old system, the CPU, was always a bottleneck, and this time around, I wasn't taking any of it. I wasn't taking any chances. I wasn't cutting any corners. I was going for the maximum, the most extreme, and I was willing to pay the price in order to achieve this, because between content creation and being a gamer for big brain mathematical calculation time, 16 years, Jesus Christ, 16 and a half years, I suppose, almost. Being a gamer for 16 and a half years and being a PC gamer ever since I was 13, which again, more mathematical time is 9 years. Oh boy, have I been wanting a machine that can actually run most games at like the maximum settings. I've been waiting a long time for this, and I figured that now, more than any time, was kind of this crossover between indulging myself and finally giving myself that payoff, as well as investing in the content and the channel, and being able to create higher quality content for everybody else as well. Granted, the visuals may be better, the gameplay, I'm not making so many promises. I'm not saying I'm good at the games, but the least I can do is look pretty while failing. Either way, as we move down the list, we have the NZXT Kraken X63. I decided to go for a liquid cooling AIO, which means that there's water inside the machine. Now, that's never normally good around the electronics, but when it's encased in a water cooler, that does actually stop the system from setting on fire. Water, fire, you know how they work, you know how they interact, and as long as you don't get the electricity involved in the water, everything should be good to go. Either way, pretty decent, and I got myself one. Moving down the list, what do we have next? We have the ROG Strix X570 gaming motherboard. It's an ITX motherboard, which basically just means it fits into super small PC cases. And we'll get more onto that in the near future as we get down to the case. But for the time being, all that really matters is it's a pretty good motherboard. It gets the job done. It supports the AMD Ryzen, which is the most important thing. And it also supports the RAM and all of the other components here as well. Fundamentally speaking, it was just a solid foundation to build the rest of the machine around. That said, this machine is basically built around the Ryzen 5 950X and the graphics card as well, which is one of the RTX 30 series graphics cards. These two components were what I had in mind, and I basically built the rest of the system to support these. Either way, this is the one I went with. I figured it was enough to match the 5950X. It was more of an investment than my previous motherboard, although all of these parts are far more of an investment than my old PC. That said, it also acts as a very strong foundation to build the rest of the machine out of. Now, as we come down, we also have the G-Skill Trident Z RGB, and I went for 64 gigabytes because, well, honestly, I'm not good at making good decisions with my life. That said, I also wanted to invest long term. I only have 2 slots. Now, I'll go in on this picture to emphasize. Because this is a tiny form factor motherboard, there are actually only 2 RAM slots. Now, I could have gone with 32, and there is a very easy argument to make that 32 is more than enough. But I wasn't taking any chances, okay? Now, granted, I paid a little bit of a premium for these, and whether it was worth it or not is up to debate. But I've gone with it. It is what it is. I was kind of working off the system of, if I wanted to upgrade from 32 to 64, that would be fine if I had 4 slots, 2 slots, 16 gigabytes each, up to 32, and then I could double that to upgrade. But when I'm only working with 2 slots, I figured I wanted to try to go to an upper end of the spectrum. Again, I don't know if this was a good idea. All I know is that the DDR4 3600 is a good idea. That is a faster speed, and it's able to be utilized more effectively by the 5950X. And again, as we move down, we got the Seagate Barracuda 5TB. I went for a large storage hard drive just because, well, I'm going to be making videos, and the plan is to also start recording videos while I live stream so that I can take out some of the elements. One of the biggest things holding me back with the live stream content is that there's almost no control over the post-production. Not only do I have to download a live stream file, which in itself is only 720p, but I then have to work with all of the assets being merged into a single layer. So if I want to get rid of overlays or sound effects or things over the top of other things, and especially, I forgot to mention this at the time, the goddamn music. There's not really anything I can do about it, and that really shows in some of my Among Us videos, where I had the stream avatars overlay on the top, and boy oh boy did some of those videos suffer when I had giant whales on the YouTube video. And again, forgetting to mention the music, I often have to make a decision whether to play music or not in the live streams if I have the intention of turning it into a video later. Either I have to edit around the music in post-production, which is really tricky, or I have to not have it during the live experience. And it really just wasn't sustainable, so I needed a storage device where I could store as much video content as possible, and this is kind of what I went with. 5TB, I think that should be good enough. It's a 2.5-inch drive as well. The speeds, I wasn't really paying too much attention to. It seems fast enough. I'll be honest, I'm not too fussed about these drives. The most important thing is the size, and that I have enough storage capacity. And on the subject of storage capacity, we come down to the Samsung 970 EVO Plus, which is an NVMe drive. The motherboard actually includes 2 NVMe drive slots. I only included 1 for the time being, but I can upgrade if I want to. But the game plan with this one, with the 1TB drive, is to is to basically utilize this exclusively for my games. So there's going to be a 1 TB drive. All of the games go onto here, and then the rest of the operating system and all of the files and the video and stuff go onto the other hard drive. In hindsight, for faster boot times, it might have been an idea to install the operating system on an NVMe drive. That said, as I mentioned, there are 2 slots and I can always upgrade, so I might consider doing this in the future. As we move down, we get to the big boy, the beefy boy, the BFGPU, as I believe it was branded. This is potentially the most important and influential part of the entire machine. Paired with the CPU itself, we have the NVIDIA GeForce RTX 3090, 24 gigabytes. That is a beefy amount of GB. And it's the Founders Edition because, I don't know, I just love the Founders Edition design. Some parts of this design have been polarizing, especially the power splitter, which, I'll be honest, I actually quite enjoy. I think I might be one of the unpopular opinion, enjoy the power splitter people, but I quite like the way that it separates around the GeForce logo. Either way, all that matters is that this wasn't the card that I was planning on getting. I was planning on getting a 3080, and none of them were available. None of the 3090s were technically available either, but all of the prices had been artificially inflated by resellers who had bought the cards and then were selling them at a premium. Initially, the price gap between the 3080 and the 3090 is almost double. However, the price difference between these scalped prices was only £200 or £300, and while that's still a lot of money and a questionable life choice, I figured when content creation is taken into account, and believe you me, that was the only justification that allowed me to make this decision, the extra £200 or £300 wasn't actually as much of a substantial setback as the original prices at RRP. With that in mind, along with the fact that the 3080 Ti was just completely cancelled until further notice, I figured it was worth cutting out a few extra months of waiting by paying a few hundred extra pounds. Again, questionable life choices, but in my books, getting this content machine earlier was a good investment. As we move further down, we kind of get to one of the core themes of this device. The case is the Cooler Master NR200. It's a mini ITX desktop case. Now, something polarizing about the computer that I'm working on is that the graphics card is one of the largest on the market, combined with one of the most powerful CPUs, requiring plenty of cooling. And I tried to put it into the smallest case on the market that I could fit all of the components into. The problem is, when it comes to ITX cases, there's almost no case that will fit the 3090. For starters, right out of the gate, the 3090 Founders Edition is a 3-slot card. Meanwhile, most of the ITX cases only support 2 to 2.5 slot cards, so that eliminated almost all of them straight away. Going into this, there was a lot of research to find compatibility. It wasn't helped by the fact that I'd initially started with a 3080 in mind, and it was only due to the lack of availability that I switched over to a 3090. Inevitably, this put a spanner in the works and reset my progress on which case I was going to use. And in the end, I ended up going for the NR200. There are a few advantages of this case. Firstly, it's extremely well ventilated. There's ventilation on the bottom, the top, either side, and the back. In conjunction with this, the Founders Edition graphics cards have a flow-through design that perfectly suits this bottom-to-top ventilation. The Founders Edition graphics cards pull in air from underneath and exhaust it through the top and the back of the case. Simultaneously, the CPU is being cooled with the radiator, which is on the side, and pulls in cold air from the exterior. By the time the air gets hot, it's already cooled the components. And the last of the important details is the Cooler Master 5 SFX Gold 850 watt power supply. The only detail I was really considering with this was the highest wattage that was actually available on the market. The problem is, all of the power supplies over about 700 or 750 watts weren't really available anywhere. Eventually, I managed to find this Cooler Master on eBay, and while the recommendation for the RTX 3090 is 750 watts, I wanted to give myself some extra headroom because I've heard about the GPU sometimes spiking in power usage, and I didn't want to take any risks. Additionally, when pairing it with a 5950X, I wasn't too sure how hungry this machine would be. And at the end of the day, for a small extra premium on a few extra wattages, wasn't too substantial. At least until I tried to order this thing on eBay, and there was an extra import charge. Regardless, it seems to power on the machine, and at the end of the day, that's all that really matters. As we move down, there's Windows 10 Pro, which I'm yet to actually get an official copy of, and some Noctua fans, which are used for extra cooling. The plan is to put these below the GPU in the case, as well as an additional one at the top of the case above the power supply. Now currently I don't actually have these, and the case still seems to be running pretty cool. I think the most surprising thing about this case is that there's actually any room under the GPU at all to fit these fans in. In almost all of the other ITX cases, there was no chance that I'd be able to fit anything under or around the GPU. While the length is usually the setback anyway, I was still impressed to see that I could slide one of these underneath, at least according to some forums online. I'm yet to actually try it out, these things are still on their way for delivery, but I'll be reporting on that in a later livestream, I'm sure. And with that, we more or less tie up the build. It came to... You know what, I'll probably cut out the parts where I show the total price. Either way. And yeah, I guess that's that. Next up, the segment where I actually show you the PC itself. So first off, don't at me with the cable management, okay? This is a small case, and honestly, this is only my second build. So the cable management was a little bit hectic. I'll be honest, there's not much room in this thing. Even though it's on the larger side of a small form factor case, it is still pretty tricky to find somewhere to put all the cables. But, importantly, this is the first boot, and as you can see, all the RGB turns on. With the cooler connected, but not yet installed, we can still see in from the side. The motherboard always has this RGB glow. It's subtle, but it does look pretty. It's very satisfying to peel these off. On the right are the RAM sticks, which are not yet turned on, hence there's no RGB. While we're here, let's quickly cover the ventilation of the GPU. On the left-hand side, air is pulled in from below and exhausted straight out of the back. On the right-hand side, air is pulled in from the bottom and exhausted up to the top of the case. On the right-hand side is also the power supply unit, but the fan is facing the back of the case, so none of the hot air interferes. Here, we get a pretty good look at the graphics card. As you can see on the right, it almost goes right to the end of the case, and this is one of the few where there's actually a little bit of wiggle room. I don't know why it's so dusty, I've only just plugged this thing in, but as you can see, the 3090. Boy is it a big graphics card, especially in such a small case. You can see there's just a little bit of space under this card as well, which I'm hoping to fit some Noctua fans into. I also like the way these power connectors go around the GeForce logo. I mentioned it earlier, this has actually been quite polarizing. Many people don't like this design, but it's all down to personal preference. There's actually some irony in the build that I've created. The NZXT cooler is well known for the fact that you can actually display moving GIFs as well as status such as temperature and control on the cooler itself. You can see it's kind of got an infinity mirror effect at the moment, but this lights up with LEDs. The same with the RGB. All of this is hidden inside the PC and you can't actually see it from outside. Also, because this is such a dense PC, I've actually had to install this fan on the back. It was on the inside, but the radiator clashes, so it had to go here, and I needed the cooling. In this shot, the PC is on its side, and the cooler is installed. This blocks up most of the side, so I'll look in from the top, and as you can see, the cable management is again pretty hectic. The important thing is, no cables get stuck in fans. The fun thing about this PC is that from the outside it's a super minimal case, but if you get up close and look through the ventilation, there's an RGB monster lurking inside. I think it's quite a funny juxtaposition, and even though the NZXT cooler doesn't get the credit it's due with its visual aspect, I still think it's really nice. Here's a little clip of my old machine for comparison. We can see it's an air-cooled 4690 for the CPU. I'm so smooth-brained that the RAM sticks aren't even in dual channel, as you can see, and for some reason I just haven't done anything about it. While I'm in the mood for PC building, I might go and fix this now. As I move down, we can see the graphics card, the GTX 970. Down the bottom, we can see there's a hard drive that's just kind of sitting there, and it's very dusty. While we're here, here's a super quick tour of my setup at the moment. Bear in mind, I've just moved from the other room because we're decorating the office. I have a dual monitor display of two pretty average monitors. I have a Mad Catz keyboard, which is nothing special, and a Go XLR for audio. I also have a cup of tea, because in Britain it's a legal requirement to have a cup of tea on hand, and here's the computer on its side. My microphone is a Shure SM7B, which is pretty good, I'll be honest. And it's held in place with a Rode mic arm. Down here I have some wireless headphones. These are the SteelSeries Arctis Wireless Pro, and they connect to a base station. I chose these ones because they're one of the few wireless headphones that are compatible with a Go XLR. Also, because of the base station, I can actually have one pair of batteries charging at all times, so I can quickly swap out. This means no downtime or plugging in. For the chair, I recently upgraded to the Secret Labs Titan. To complete the setup, I have my gaming companion, my lizard, who's in a huge enclosure just behind me. Because a true gamer needs RGB, I bought this cheap second mouse for my old computer. I realized I only had one mouse, the Mad Catz Rat, and I'm using this for my new computer now. And check this out. When the Go XLR powers on, it has a really cool light show. Here's a quick size comparison of my new versus old PC. See if you can guess which is more powerful. Okay, so essentially we've covered the PC build. I think this more or less covers everything I know how to talk about. I'm not exactly a tech specialist channel. I'm not exactly well clued up. I just did some very intense research on this specific build, and now that I've got it completed, unless something goes wrong, I'm just basically going to close my eyes to technology for 5 years, go la 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 la, as all of the new releases year on year end up coming out and being better specs than what I have. At the end of the day, there's always going to be something better sooner or later. Fundamentally, now is the time that I need to jump in, more than anything, with a new technology upgrade. Investing in both myself and the channel simultaneously, I may have gone a little overboard on some of the budgeting, but again, I've been gaming for 16 years, and now being locked down as well is kind of become a priority, especially with content creation in mind as well. Because I rushed this video, some of the camera work and filming wasn't exactly its best. I might come back and revisit this topic later down the road. For the time being, I hope this was at least a good introduction to the PC. And with that, and only 12 subscribers to go before this needs to be a finished project, I'm going to say thank you again to everybody who's taken part, whether you stuck around the entire time, whether you're new, or whether somebody showed up and then left partway through. Just taking part, even for a time, is awesome, and I appreciate it. Everybody has busy lives and things to do, and there are so many content creators out there. But honestly, I'm just thankful that some people stop by and enjoy their time and stick around for a while. Either way, if you've made it this far, thank you, and I hope to see you again in the future.